Welcome back to the Messianic Hour. I'm your host, Rabbi Scott. This show is dedicated to reaching the lost and educating the found. We're glad you're with us as we get ready to talk on the second half of the show. But I want to encourage you, go to our website, rabbiscott.com. Sign up for our newsletter. If you're watching us via the internet or you're listening to us on radio, let us know what you think as well. Check it out. We give you the free book, I Have a Friend Who's Jewish to You, and the prophecy card just for signing up. Remember, too, you can visit our web store and also plant a tree in Israel. Bless the land and bless this ministry as we work with Israel to refurbish their forests, that many of them were burnt down during the summer months and the past wars. So they've been really struggling to rebuild them, and you can be a part of that. Bless the land of Israel as you bless the work we do. And, Judy, it's amazing what we're seeing going on in the world today. Right now we're hearing reports in Israel that Israel now has a rocket. They test-fired a rocket this week that can actually hit Iran with nuclear weapons. Many people feel that Israel is getting ready for either a preemptive strike against both Iran and the Gaza. Also this week, Netanyahu stated that he has given the IDF permission to go and do anything necessary to stop these rockets attacks. We might be on the verge of an interesting time while we're in Israel. We might be reporting from a bunker as we are in the land, but I know that we'll be safe in God's place, and we're excited getting ready to go on our trip in just less than 2 weeks. In fact, by the time this show airs, it'll be the following week. We'll be getting ready to head to Israel, so we're excited about it. But talking about that, Judy, we're in the holiday season now, coming up with Thanksgiving and Christmas and Hanukkah and all these holidays, and I'm always asked, what are we supposed to do? So let's talk about that some.
Well, specifically talking about Thanksgiving, it's really interesting that it falls right around the same time as Sukkot.
Right. Matter of fact, when it was originally celebrated until Abraham Lincoln moved it into November, it actually used to be celebrated in September, October.
That's right. And according to some scholars, they think that before the Pilgrims came to the New World, that they lived among the Sephardic Jews in Holland. And by living in close proximity to them, they would have watched them and observed them and seen what they do. And we know that they were devout Calvinists and Puritans,
right,
and they really studied the Bible. That's how they lived their life. That's why they were coming here, so they would have religious freedom. And really, they probably kind of regarded themselves as a new Israel, not in the way that we hear about it today in replacement theology, but they were like the Israelites going to a new land, having to settle a new land. They were going to their promised land where they would have religious freedom. But of course, what we know from our history is they found it very hard. It was very hard to get established, very hard to grow crops. A number of them died, but they still knew that this time, at the time of the harvest, was a time to have a celebration.
Right, to give thanks. And as in Judaism, what did you do on the last day? You asked for the Jewish, the Feast of the Lord. You would ask for rain. What do farmers need? Rain. So we see them bringing this together in what we now celebrate as Thanksgiving.
And we know that they were highly religious, and they kind of regarded this journey as a type of exodus,
right,
for them. And so they would most likely have sought an appropriate biblical holiday to commemorate this.
Right.
So there's really roots in Thanksgiving that point back to a biblical celebration.
Exactly. So we see that. So for those of you out there, yes, it's okay to celebrate Thanksgiving, and we see the importance of it as a way of thanking God for the great harvest that He's done, for all the blessings He's given us, for bringing us through those trials and tribulations, from going to a temporary shelter to building and settling this land that we now have. So great point.
And we know that the Bible tells us that there are several celebrations that we should do.
Right, Feast of the Lord.
The Feast of the Lord, His Moedim, the Rosh Chodesh, the new moon.
Right. All done at appointed times as well.
Exactly. You've got Shavuot, you've got Passover, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, all of the feasts and festivals that God commanded. But we see that the Bible does not speak against celebrating holidays, but it doesn't speak for celebrating additional holidays.
Right. Matter of fact, we have proof, though, in Judaism that this was acceptable and that Yeshua himself did not go against it. We know the 7 feasts mentioned in Leviticus 23, but then we have other feasts like the Feast of Purim, the Feast of Hanukkah. Neither of these were God ordained or God appointed times, but these were the Jewish people thanking God for the miracles that took place, for the great events that happened. So, and we even see Yeshua himself in John chapter 9, Yochanan chapter 9, says he dwelled in the courtyards at the Feast of Lights, the Feast of Dedication, which is the Festival of Lights, another name for Hanukkah. So if Yeshua had a problem with us celebrating these man-made festivals that point to God, he would have stopped. He would have done one of his, "You have been told this, but I tell you this."
And we know that as a believer, we need to be careful of what we do because it affects our walk. It affects our testimony. And
that's why we don't celebrate Halloween, because it has nothing to do with the believers, and Messiah has to do with Satan. I don't celebrate Ramadan either, you know.
And we see that the difference between the holidays that God has specified, his times, and other holidays that are celebrated today are that some of our modern holidays really have pagan rituals in them. It encompasses things that are against what we as believers should be standing for.
And even this has happened in Judaism. We have pagan rituals that have added into the Jewish feast. Example, Passover. We're only told to remember 3 things: the matzah, the lamb, and the bitter herbs. We've added things like the lettuce and things like that, the roasted egg. But these are symbols that we understand from that. And so here's a point, like at Christmas. So we celebrate the birth of our Messiah. There's no problem celebrating the birth. It's a great miracle, just like what he did at the temple. But we need to celebrate it when it happened. That's why we recognize when our Messiah was born at Sukkot, the Feast of Booths, when God dwelt among us. But we don't do gift giving and things like that on it, or Christmas trees, because that's not part of what it was. But what do you do about the mixed families that we have in the Messianic movement, Judy?
Well, that's where everybody has to pray. They have to seek the Lord, and they need to make decisions based on what God has put in their heart.
Right.
Because you also have one of the 10 Commandments, honor your mother and father. You know, if you're going to create offense by, coming across as, well, I'm,
holier than thou.
Yes, I'm so holy, I can't do this because it has pagan rituals. That's affecting your walk.
Right.
But you can participate, so you're supporting your family, so you're being a good witness, but it doesn't mean that you're taking to heart what the celebration is.
Our daughter, Natalie, your side of the family is Gentile, mine's Jewish, so we have to support part of that family, and part of my brothers and sisters have married Gentile families as well, and there's that compromise, but there's a way to teach and understand as well.
And especially about the teaching, this is where you need to research. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? We have so many people, when we teach on Halloween, they're like, oh, I never knew.
Right.
Well, do your research. Understand where this comes from. Understand the roots of what it is you're doing. Because we know when Constantine came in, he wanted to change everything. And he moved it to Sunday because it was more worship after the sun. And a lot of these holidays...
And he changed the day of the resurrection, from the first fruits to the first Sunday as well.
And a lot of these holidays came about as an attempt to redefine a pagan holiday with a Christian meaning, with a meaning for believers behind it.
George Washington did not have a Christmas tree in his house. Why? In the White House or in his house, because they didn't do that at that time. That was added later on. So we have to understand where these things come from and how we should do it. We have actually some great articles on our website that I deal with this exact topic.
So when you're considering celebrating a holiday, here's just a few things that you need to really think and pray about. Does this holiday in any way promote a false doctrine or an immorality? Can you thank God for what you observe on the holiday, like Thanksgiving? Will celebrating the holiday detract from your witness.
And those are great points. Next week we'll look at the Feast of Hanukkah and how believers should celebrate it. So check in. Until then, this is Rabbi Scott
and Judy
saying shalom and pray for the peace of Jerusalem.